Well, hey, you, and welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Miss Michaela Mae Show. I'm your host, Miss Michaela Mae, here with my corgis, Tank and Willie, and also tuning in with very wet hair. If you are on the video, you can see that my hair is very wet. And one of the reasons I am recording with wet hair is one, I did not want to dry it, and two, when I was looking at the rest of my day, the projects that I want to do, I want to be able to get lost in, meaning I don't want to have to keep checking the clock to make sure I get this video done today because I am going to do an experiment where I make and post a video for the Miss Michaela Mae Show for 31 days straight to just get my feet wet and really what I have needed. And we'll talk about this because this will be the action step for today is keeping promises to ourselves. Because one of the things that I've learned is I was very good at keeping promises to other people, but not good at keeping them to myself. And one of the good ways to rebuild that trust with ourselves, because that is the side effect of not keeping promises to ourselves, is we start to lose trust within ourselves. And the most interesting thing about it is if we keep promises to other people, but not ourselves, it still builds trust issues within ourselves. And that is one thing that I have been working on is rebuilding that trust within myself. So, in wanting to get this video done to keep that promise to myself, I'm really practicing the done is better than perfect. And so we are getting this up with or without wet hair, but clearly it is with wet hair. So, welcome back to the Miss Michaela Mae Show. I am going to talk about part 3 of Taylor Swift Can Change, and so can you. And I really sat with this before I recorded today's episode, asking myself, what are we going to talk about today? And just as much as you, I'm surprised that we are talking about part 3 of Taylor Swift Can Change, and so can you. But I really do have more to say on this topic and more that I want to share with you. And specifically, the more that I want to discuss today is who were you before you were told it wasn't okay? And the reason that this is tying back into this Taylor Swift topic that we've now been talking about for 3 episodes is this concept. And a side note, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to part 1 and 2 before you continue with part 3 here. So if you have not listened to part 1 and 2, please go back and do so because I'm very much building on the concept throughout these 3 episodes. So it's not that you can't get value out of this episode, you can. And I think it will be even more valuable if you start with parts 1 and 2 first. So, back into part 3 is this question, this concept of who were you before you were told it wasn't okay. And what we talked about in part 1 is this concept of the trauma self versus the true self. And this question is one thing we can start to ask ourselves to start to unwind it. So, as I said in part 1, one of my theories as to why the third Taylor Swift, or the third, this last, we're on part 3 of my episodes, not album 3 of Taylor Swift, but this Taylor Swift 12 album, why it sounds different than her albums before is she is starting to discover different parts of herself because she is with a man who makes her feel safe. And when our nervous systems, when our bodies start to feel safe, different parts of ourselves will start to come out. And then we can start to unwind this concept of what is my true self and what is my trauma self? Who did I have to become in order to survive versus who am I when I truly feel safe within my own body? And I have to tell you the story about when I first discovered this concept, which is really interesting for me. One of the goals I've set for myself within my own life is to not be controlled by external things. And when I turned 21, I did go out and drink. And then because I wanted to experience it, I actually had never been drunk prior to turning 21. And so when I turned 21, I wanted to go experience what it was like to drink. But after I had that experience, I'm like, I'm not going to drink. I come from a family of alcoholics. And my joke between, and you might hear my corgi Willie walking beside me. Hey, Willie. Hey, buddy. One of my jokes that I've had between me, myself, and I is that my family has drank enough to last for generations. I don't need to add to that because we probably have enough alcohol in our DNA to last again for multiple generations. And what I realized is my fear of alcohol, my fear of becoming an alcoholic was controlling me just as much as alcohol had controlled some members in my family. So when I had that realization, I wanted to drink intentionally so that I wasn't controlled by alcohol, whether it was from an extreme consumption problem or what you would call maybe a extreme dry problem. I'm thinking there's a Miranda Lambert song called Dry Town, and that's kind of the concept I'm thinking of just being extremely dry when it comes to my liquor. So I had a little period of time where I would let myself drink and get myself to like a buzz and understand and again build that trust within myself that I can control it, but I can also let loose and have a good time, because that has been another thing that I have had to work through in my life, is allowing myself to let loose and have a good time. So in one of those moments, I come from a town called it's called Sandy, Oregon. And in Sandy, Oregon, there is this festival called the Mountain Days Festival. If you're even from around the Sandy, Oregon area, you've probably heard of the Mountain Days Festival. And so a couple friends and I wanted to go up to the festival, and that night was a night that I had chose, I'm going to let myself get to a buzz and maybe just past a buzz, but again, without the intention of getting like blackout drunk. And I did so. And there was a guy that my friends and I at the time, we were doing CrossFit, and kind of the routine. I have to remember to tell you backstories, because if you're listening to this and you're not from Sandy, Oregon, and you've never heard of Mountain Days, like I have to set the scene, and I forget sometimes, like you can't read my mind. So you don't know what the scene looks like. So I have to tell you about it. And so there's a beer garden, it's outdoors. And then typically what happens is younger people, and I don't really know what the older crowd does. I'm pretty sure the older crowd tends to go to the beer gardens and they kind of go home for the night, where the younger crowds go to the beer gardens and then they will walk to one of the nearby bars. So my age crowd at the time, I'm recording this in 2025. I believe this was in 2018. You would go to the beer gardens, and then we went to what is a bar called No Place. Yeah, it's quite the name for the bar. Where are you going? No Place. No, seriously, where are you going? No Place, the bar. And so we'd all walk to No Place, and we had seen this guy at the beer gardens, and he had jumped. There was this random like blow up. I don't even remember because it was so dark, but it looked like a blow up couch. And my friends, who were also Buzz, jumped on it. And this guy jumped on them. And she's like, I do CrossFit. I can lift you off. Get off. So he gets off, kind of, we'd never seen the guy, just kind of go to No Place. Well, later, and I'm buzzed at this point, I'm leaning, there's the main bar at No Place, and then there's kind of a bar in the middle where anyone can kind of just sit and lean up against for extra seating space. And I'm leaning up against the bar, but I have my foot resting on a chair nearby. And this guy comes, grabs the chair, not realizing my foot was on it. And I look at him, I was like, hey, my foot was sitting on that. He said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And he paused, he's like, did you just say your foot was sitting on that? I said, yeah, my foot was sitting on it and you just took it. He's like, I'm sorry, but your foot? I'm like, yeah, my foot. And I don't know how, but we started talking, and I look at him. I said, wait, you're the guy that jumped on my friends at the beer garden. He's like, yeah, you guys said you were going to lift me. And the friend that I was with, her and I did CrossFit. And at the time, her and I both could lift a lot. In fact, we had just done push presses that morning, and we had PR'd our push press at 145. And I think I had lifted 145 and she had push press 150. So her and I could lift quite a bit of weight overhead. And he's like, you could lift me. I said, what do you weigh? 140 pounds? I push press more than you this morning. And he looked at me and said, 144. And I said, okay, yeah, I push press 145. Her and I could both lift you, and she could lift more than me. So, and he said, well, I may look, because he was like, I'm 5'3" on a good day, and he was pretty small. And he said, well, I'm pretty strong. I'm a roofer. I'm like, okay, big whoop. He's like, well, it's pretty tough to be a roofer. You need a lot of strength to be a roofer. I'm like, dude, I've done it. Just don't even give me the time of day. And he's like, you've roofed before. And he's clearly thinks I'm just absolutely like bullshitting him. Well, my dad owns rental properties, and I have done a little bit of everything in my life because my dad owns rental properties. I grew up helping him with the rental properties. My family has owned a dry cleaning, restoration, and I'm trying to think of the other, linen company. And then also there's a window coverings. I'm like, why am I blinking on the divisions in our company? And then my dad, when he quote unquote retired, became a hay farmer. So I have done a little bit of everything. I can back a truck and trailer better than I can apply like eyeliner and makeup. When I watch these people like do makeup tutorials on TikTok, like it is so insane to me, but I can hook up a trailer, back a trailer, tow 6 tons of hay, no big deal. So I'm explaining it to him. And there's certain things that we do in life that someone is, in fact, not bullshitting you because they would only know these things if they had done it before. So I'm explaining to the house that I helped roof with my dad, and his face is just dropping. And he looks at me, or he's looking at me, I better said, and says, you actually have roofed a house before? I'm like, yes, I've roofed a house before. I've laid turf, I've done siding, I've helped frame a house, I've helped lay flooring in a house. I've done a little bit of it all. And he's like, okay, you could lift me and whatever. And anyway, he goes his own way, asked me for his number. I'm like, or asked me for my number. I'm like, we're not going to see each other again. It's fine. It's great talking to you. But why I told you that whole story, what was really important to me is, like I said, I was buzzed enough that I was carefree, but I was sober enough that I had the awareness of who I was when I was sober versus who I was when I had this buzz going. And what I realized is I am extremely sassy. And I am so afraid to show that sober because when I was younger, I got in trouble for being that sassy. And what was really important for me in that moment is, here was this dude who, quite frankly, I felt like I was kind of a jerk to, but I was being authentic. I was being sassy. And he asked me for my number. And it was just a very interesting dynamic that I realized one of the personas, if you will, that I was before I was told it wasn't okay, is I was a very sassy human. And so there's a lot of people in the spaces that I've been in, what, if you want to call it the healing space or the spiritual space, that will encourage, like, don't drink, it's bad. In that moment, drinking became a very powerful awareness tool for me because I got to discover a part of myself that I had totally forgotten was even there. And also in that moment, I'm not going to fully break this down in this video, but I do believe that there is a truth of us that comes out when we're drunk. These parts of ourselves that we continue to suppress within ourselves, and then we let loose, and that part, like the way I describe it, it's like this part of us that gives a fuck comes down, and who we really are gets to show up. It's not really a drunk self. It's actually a true self. It's just the part that we don't think is okay to show when we are sober. We just don't give a fuck when we're drunk. And so then it's allowed to come out. And so this, again, if you have drank before, I want you to just take a moment and ask yourself, like, is there a part of me when I am buzzed or when I'm drunk that I need to learn to bring out when I'm sober? Because this is where drinking can become a problem, is when we only feel okay bringing these parts of ourselves out when we're drunk. The key is to, as crazy as this sounds, is use drinking as a learning tool and ask ourselves, how can I start to bring this part of myself out when I'm sober? So even for me, for example, I may not be comfortable sharing this part of myself around certain members of my family. Even to this day, I'm practicing, I'm getting better, but we all kind of turn back into our trauma selves around our family. I don't care what anyone says, it is a thing. But I bring out more of my sass when I'm on the podcast or when I'm talking to my friends, or even being okay with letting this part come out, and also being okay with people not liking this part of myself, but I want to like this part of myself because it is a very true part of who I am. And that's why I wanted to talk about this in continuation in part 3 of this Taylor Swift series, is like, because it really is, and what I believe she is showing us is, how do we discover and bring out these different parts of ourselves, whether we're with our perfect partner, whether we're drunk or not? Like, how do we bring these parts out all the time and be okay with these parts, whether we are with somebody or whether we're a little tipsy or a little high or whatever it is? So that is what I want to leave you with today, is the question: who were you before you were told it wasn't okay? How can you start to bring that part out, even if you're only bringing that part out when you're alone in the shower or alone in your bed or alone in your car? How can you start to bring more awareness and acceptance to that part of you? And if you have drank, or if you even have plans to go drink with your friends this weekend, like, if you get that little bit of a buzz, is there a part of you that you can discover that you can start to bring back out. That is all I have for today on the Miss Michaela Mae Show. Thank you so much for tuning in with myself as well as my corgis, Tank and Willie. I'm so thankful that you're here. If you found value out of the show, I would really appreciate if you would like and subscribe to this video and to this podcast. And if you feel so called, I would be absolutely honored for you to rate and review the show. It helps other people find the show, but I also just absolutely love hearing from you. So if you feel so called, please leave a review. It would be an honor. And until next time, we will talk to you later.